Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are live here. Yes, not the normal setup. I hope that y'all had a chance to watch us at the NFL draft. We are in an Airbnb downtown Kansas City, right next to it. Let me show this off just real quick before we get into it. We are going to have a lot to talk about. We are going to have a lot to look into. I mean, I think we should be set up here. Let me know if the chat is, let me know if the audio is crappy here. I'm assuming it's not, but who knows? Who knows? Okay, so here is what we have. I got to show you all this. Come on. Look how cute this is. Is that not the cutest thing you've ever seen? Look at that. That's yours truly, Bijan Robinson right there. You're going to have a ton of stuff coming out on TikTok, obviously on the main channel. There's everything, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We already talked about that earlier today. We are here to talk about what just happened. We have some massive updates, not only with Levis falling out of round one, but with the Detroit Lions deciding to come out of left field and deciding to take Jahmyr Gibbs. Like, okay, there's a lot to get into. Drop a like on this. Subscribe to the channel if you play Dynasty. And, of course, our updated Dynasty rookie rankings will be on flogfantasy.com tonight, okay? I am going to have to move Levis so far down. It is going to be painful. It is already incredibly late. I am extremely tired. But I'm going to update the rankings for everybody tonight. I'll do that for the Dynasty 1 quarterback. I'll do that for the Dynasty Superflex. It's not too late to join flogfantasy.com. Of course, you can find the link in the description. You can find the link in the comment section after this is posted. Sign up, promo code FLOCK, 100% deposit match. I'm sorry, not 100% deposit match. You can tell how tired I am. 30% off any subscription. And with promo code FLOCK, yours truly will go through and make a podcast breaking down your team. But anyway, let's go position by position here on what matters. We have starting off numero uno, Bryce Young. There's nothing to really talk about. This was the expectation. This was priced in. 2, this is where the wild card was. Didn't really know who the quarterback was going to be. Obviously, at the beginning of the offseason, we thought it was going to be CJ Stroud. Then we had some smoke. Here's my theory. And I know maybe I'm just being a conspiracy theory here. I'm a conspiracy theorist. But I think you probably had the Houston Texans seeing if they can have some shenanigans and get CJ Stroud falling to 12. So they're putting out a bunch of crap into the media to see how far Stroud could possibly fall. And then you had the rumors Titans were going to trade up to 3 to grab him. So they're like, okay, our plan's not working. We have to take him at 2. But real quick, we have the lad joining us. We have Danny out here. Fair warning, he's having a little bit too much fun tonight. I would say maybe a lot of too much fun. But anyway, he is going to be able to join us here and give us his thoughts. Danny, is there anything I'm missing out on CJ Stroud? Where you put him in startup drafts?
I mean, he's going to be going within the top 4 of your rookie drafts. Sorry, let me move my mic down a little bit. He's going to be going within the top 4. The only other quarterbacks I would argue above him would be Bryce Young, obviously going first overall to the Carolina Panthers, and Anthony Richardson, you guys will see, we'll get into in a second, going to the dream landing spot there with the Indianapolis Colts, working with Shane Steichen, obviously the former predecessor of the Jalen Hurts-led Philadelphia Eagles offense. I think you're going to that guy at number 2 overall.
You're making an argument to have Richardson there because obviously Richardson's the guy we're going to next. You think Richardson's in consideration over Stroud?
I do think so. I would take him personally over Stroud myself, and I do think that.
Okay, I know you're on the East Coast, so I know you're probably not going to get to update your rankings on Flock Fantasy tonight. But when you look to, where are you thinking you're putting these guys in startup drafts? Like, that's the main thing. And Corey, I'd love to hear your thought on this as well. Where are we going with these guys in startups?
Well, right off the bat, pre-draft, I had Richardson and I had Bryce Young as top 20 overall picks, Stroud as a top 25 overall pick. Now, if you wanted to take any 3 of these guys within the second round of your startup draft, I wouldn't bat an eye.
Okay. Corey, are you there as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's no middle class at quarterback. There isn't one. Like, it's the elite quarterbacks, Daniel Jones and Kenny Pickett. Like, that's the middle class. And then these rookies are immediately hopping those guys for me because their value on the open market supersedes a guy like Daniel Jones, Kenny Pickett, whatever. We got 21-year-old quarterbacks that all got top 4 round draft capital.
Yeah. Oh, real quick, we have this question. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. What is Richardson going to do to Jonathan Taylor? Because obviously, if Richardson can run the ball himself, Like maybe we have to worry about like him vulturing rushing touchdowns. Maybe we're not going to see a massive target share for JT, but is he just going to improve the offense where you're just going to have more points to go around overall?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
This is like Jonathan Taylor was a guy that suffered from an efficiency standpoint last year. Having a quarterback who's equally as good of an athlete as him can't hurt his cause. I mean, he's a raw quarterback, so it's possible that the offense struggles, but like, let's be realistic here. The Colts offense wasn't good last year and Taylor was still productive. So I think with Richardson, he's going to open up a lot of rushing lanes for Taylor. He probably hurts Pittman a little bit more than Taylor because, you know, rookie quarterback, probably not going to throw the ball a ton given his skill set. But I think this offense will run between those two guys.
Yeah, I'm honestly with you. We have this coming out from Michael says, not a good night for fantasy football enthusiasts, in my humble opinion. I'm almost the exact opposite. As we go through here, I think we have a lot of excitement. I mean, Paris Johnson, real quick, going to Arizona. I think it's great for the Arizona Cardinals offense, especially the additional capital that they pick up. I think if you're a Kyler Murray owner, this is like best case scenario for you. If you have Kyler going over to Bijan at 8, obviously it's a bad offense, but they're going to be running the ball so damn much. I think it's one of the better landing spots we could have had for Bijan Robinson. And Corey Danny, I showed this at the beginning, but just in case anybody was not out here, I got to show it again. Okay. This is yours truly standing next to the man. Okay. It is still shocking. It is still the biggest deal in the world for me. So I have to show that. But anyway, with Bijan, is this just cementing him Dynasty #1 running back overall?
I mean, he was already there for me. Top 10 overall draft capital. Landing on the Atlanta Falcons. I know we were all hyped on Tyler Algier. 1,000-yard rookie of the season, but we're talking about a 5th-round pick. We're talking about the 8th overall pick in the NFL draft. If this guy is going ahead of any of the edge rushers, any of the defenders, any of the quarterbacks at that spot, I mean, Bijan Robinson is the no-brainer 101, and I think this is a guy that you can take in the first round of your redraft leagues.
Yeah. Corey, Dynasty running back 1 overall. Anything else to talk about?
Oh, yeah. There was like quite literally nothing that would have happened that would have not made him Dynasty running back 1 unless he had slid, you know, really far in the draft or whatever. So, yeah, for me, he's easily Dynasty running back 1. Back to the like whole, you know, bad day for fantasy football enthusiasts kind of point that was brought up in the chat. I do kind of agree a little bit just because we only had 3 first-round quarterbacks, which definitely hurts in Superflex. You lose if you have a, you know, 106, 107, 108, 109 type of pick. That pick lost a little bit of value without Will Levis. Even if you didn't like Will Levis, that was the range he was going to go in. And also, we didn't get Michael Mayer going in the first round, which to me was a first-round rookie pick, tail end of the first-round rookie pick. So that hurt a little bit, but I do love the landing spot for JSN. We'll get to that, I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll get to it. We're going in order. One thing, I know this is annoying, but come on, I got to. If this is true, you better send me a Twitter DM with the screenshot of it or the clip of it. You better send me something because I need to see that. But anyway, going over to our next spot, Tennessee, Chicago bringing in offensive linemen. I'm assuming pretty good for Fields. We're not moving the needle too much though, right?
No, I mean, he's always been valued as a top 10 overall startup pick for me, first round startup pick at the minimum. So, I mean, getting an offensive lineman at 10th overall just kind of reimburses that kind of theory that this is a guy I'd be willing to be taken at the 10th to 12th overall area. If you want to argue the top 7 overall quarterbacks and Chase and Jefferson over Justin Fields, I wouldn't bat an eye. But after that, I mean, considering the youth, considering the upside, him, Deshaun Watson, and any other receivers or running backs you want to bring up in that area, I personally would favor Fields over any of the field.
Okay, well, we'll get into Fields in another video. That'll be an entire video, my man. We can go back and forth with it. But this is the big thing we have to talk about. Obviously, this is what everybody's going to be talking about it. I don't think anybody was expecting it. Jahmyr Gibbs to the Detroit Lions. I know we were on the Fantasy Stock Exchange live stream when this happened, but my initial reaction was like, you like Jahmyr Gibbs so much. You are so over DeAndre Swift that you take Gibbs at 12 when you have pick 18 as well. You know, so are we 100% guaranteed a DeAndre Swift trade here? Or is it like the Detroit Lions look and go, okay, we're going to get a 5th round pick for DeAndre Swift. No other NFL team's really going to value him. He's better off as a backup on our squad. Like, is DeAndre Swift just done?
If he stays on the Lions, yes. Because you don't draft a running back at 12th overall and sign another running back 3 years, $18 million if you have a plan on the running back you took just 2 years ago. So I do think, like you kind of said, he does get traded. But if he doesn't get traded and he's the third running back fiddle to David Montgomery, to now Jahmyr Gibbs, who, I mean, Corey compared to DeAndre Swift in his film evaluation, goes 12th overall, has that team investment. Like, if he stays on the Lions, his role is basically redundant.
Corey, anything else to add there? Is there, like, what is the probability that he actually stays on the Lions? Because I'm assuming everybody is saying he's going to get traded, right? But there's also a chance that, just like us dynasty players, us fantasy football players, we just think DeAndre Swift's way better than NFL teams think. You know, like, that's always a possibility. This man was a top 3 dynasty running back last offseason for pretty much everybody. I had him as like that top 3, top 5 guy.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes to show you how short the shelf life and the 15 minutes of fame can be for the running back position. We didn't really see a full season of Swift, like, you know, be the guy last year. He got injured at the end of the year on Thanksgiving or whatever 2 years ago and had the shoulder injury. And after that, they like didn't trust the guy with a full workload. And it seems like all it takes. And the takeaway for me is obviously that Swift is probably going to get moved. They're probably going to trade him in the 4th, 5th round or whatever. But the other takeaway for me is, like, this needs to be like an alert for a lot of people on guys like Javonte Williams, where they could add a running back tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And also, just like, there's no guarantee, like, just because these guys get injured and we love them as prospects, like, NFL teams understand the running back position is pretty replaceable. It's pretty volatile. And they're not going to just be like, all right, we have Javonte Williams, we're not going to draft a running back the entire duration of his rookie contract.
Yeah, no, I was honestly going to kind of ask Bijan Robinson about that. I was going to ask, like, how does it feel? Like, a lot of people say you're the best player in the draft, but nobody likes running back, so you're not going to be number 1 overall. Then I got too nervous. I got too scared. I wasn't going to step on any toes like that. But going over to our next few spots, I mean, Pittsburgh takes an offensive lineman. Don't know if we really need to talk about it. We've got a couple defensive players, blah, blah, blah. You know, I don't know anything about freaking Jack Campbell. What can I add there? JSN 20. This is what I'm here for. This is what I am all about. First wide receiver off the board. Goes to a spot where obviously we don't have phenomenal quarterback play, but in terms of a natural long-term fit, DK Metcalf on the outside, JSN mixing in this. There couldn't be a better compliment to DK Metcalf than Jackson Smith-Njigba. Like, they immediately become, I don't want to say like the best pair of wide receivers. You have Chase Higgins, you have Tyreek Hill, you have Waddle. They're right there, though. I would say they're, number 3, number 4 in terms of wide receiver pairs in the NFL. And I think this locks JSN to, I don't know. Let me go back to, like, Gibbs here and ask you all this, because I know we didn't talk too much about Gibbs, more so talked about Swift. Who are you taking between JSN and Gibbs at the 102 in a 1 quarterback league, and how close are they?
JSN.
Corey, where are we at?
Honestly, it would depend on my team. I think you could make the argument either way. I think they're 1A, 1B. Both guys would be 3rd round startup picks. They'd be, you know, JSN would probably be a top 10 to 12 dynasty wide receiver. Jahmyr Gibbs, probably a top 8 to 10 dynasty running back, maybe even a little bit higher than that. For me, I think I would probably take JSN at face value if I was building out like a productive struggle or whatever. But if you have, you know, a 7 deep wide receiver core and only 1 great running back, and you're ready to turn this thing into a contending window type of team, then I would go with Gibbs. To me, they're neck and neck in the same tier.
Okay, yeah, real quick. Like I said, I actually brought this up on the Fantasy Stock Exchange live stream as well, but I found this really cool website, flockfantasy.com, something along those lines. Let me pull up the rankings that we have here real quick, because I think I don't know if I can be moving Jackson Smith-Njigba compared to where I have him currently. So if you're looking at JSN in my rankings, I had JSN ranked at 29 overall. So in terms of moving him from here, I think Richardson gets a bump up clearly. Stroud gets a bump up. I'm going to have to move Will Levis down, maybe literally 100 picks in these rankings tonight. But
I don't blame
Jackson Smith-Njigba, I don't know if I can put him ahead of Devonta Smith, T. Higgins. Like, if we're just looking at like my wide receiver rankings here, like, what are y'all planning on doing on this front? Like, with this group of like 4 guys, T. Higgins, Devonta Smith, JSN, London, where are you having him in that mix?
Well, for starters, I'm going to quickly add that Devontae Smith, Drake London, the proven NFL contributors, would be ahead of JSN in my opinion. But
Okay.
you want to argue him like 13, 14, 15 overall, I wouldn't bat an eye.
Yeah, I'm at 13 right now, just behind Drake London, who you have just behind him there, and then also ahead of Metcalf. And then, I mean, when it comes to the like veteran productive guys, that's totally dependent on team construction. Like if somebody told me, I have a loaded team ready to compete, would you rather have JSN or Tyreek Hill? I mean, it's a completely different discussion. You got one guy who's 28 years old, 29 years old, one guy who's 21 years old. It would all depend where your team is. But for me, I mean, Tyler Lockett's probably going to be a pain in the ass his rookie season for JSN, but I think this is a guy that can play on the outside. Both of those guys are interchangeable to some degree. They can use them, inside out versatility. And like you said, he's a perfect complement to DK Metcalf. And honestly, he's a better fit for Geno Smith's skill set as a quarterback as well. If Geno Smith is there more than just 1 year, then we'd have a guy who would be Geno's like go-to possession receiver. We've seen Jared Goff gravitate towards Amon-Ra St. Brown in Detroit, and it's a very similar situation. My comp for JSN was Amon-Ra, and Jared Goff and Geno Smith are basically the same type of quarterback.
If I can add to that real quick, you mentioned Geno Smith. You mentioned this offense can be a high-powered. I mean, we mentioned on the Fantasy Stock Exchange stream that we expect this to be a top 10 level offense, potentially flirting with top five overall level, adding JSN to this mix. I mean, CeeDee Lamb was the ceiling comp we've had for JSN. CeeDee Lamb, if you guys don't remember, in 2020, entered that year as a Dallas Cowboy behind Amari Cooper, behind Michael Gallup, potentially behind targets with Dalton Schultz or Blake Jarman, whoever projected to be the starting tight end there. And then he ended up having a solid rookie year. So if we're looking at it right now from a JSN perspective, yeah, we expect DK to be the wide receiver 1 overall in this offense, but I wouldn't be shocked if JSN was still a very productive rookie wide receiver, had 900 yards, 1,000 overall yards. And then by this time next year, let's say they move on from Tyler Lockett, have an out in his contract at the end of this year or next year, be able to build this offense around JSN and DK Metcalf, we could be looking at a top 15 overall guy for the next 2 to 10 years after this upcoming year.
Real quick, I'm just going to have to put out this disclaimer. Because I was able to interview Jackson Smith-Njigba, I will never be a good person to ask in terms of his value and what we should be paying for him, because my brain will always be broken. I will always be biased in that direction, and I'm not going to apologize for it. Don't ask me questions about JSN, Bryce Young, or Bijan Robinson. I'm all in, okay? I think you're talking about CeeDee Lamb being a ceiling comp. I think JSN could be better than CeeDee Lamb, but I probably lost my mind over here. Now, going over to Quentin Johnston, the landing spot of the draft, right? We were going back and forth on y'all's live stream about Quentin Johnston versus Jordan Addison. And my simple thing with it is I understand and not a great guy at the catch point, blah, blah, blah in college. The man breaks out as a freshman, dominates as a sophomore, declares as a junior, round 1 in the NFL draft. Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen, and Mike Williams both have contracts where it's like they're either restructuring next year or they're not bringing these guys back in 2024. They can save like $20 million by cutting each wide receiver. Like they could save $40 million by moving on from both guys next year. So Quentin Johnston finds the best landing spot in the entire draft. I thought he was underrated coming in. I preferred him over Zay Flowers to begin with. But let me hear your thoughts on this, because I know we were already going back and forth with it on your live stream.
Yeah, I can go ahead, because I actually had QJ at wide receiver 4 pre-draft for the same kind of concerns that you outlined. But at the same time, this is a really good spot for him. He does land in an area where there's no long-term future there. You have a great quarterback that you're connected to. He needs some work. He needs some development. But if you get him design touches early on, if you get him downfield work, which he's already good at both of those things, he's great after the catch and he can work downfield, then he could really develop into a great wide receiver. And if he develops into a great wide receiver, he has he's one of the only big receivers in this class, 6'3", 210 pounds. I think I wouldn't bat an eye with somebody taking him over Jordan Addison. I personally, though, would take Jordan Addison still. Although, even though I had Zay Flowers ranked ahead of him pre-draft, I think I would probably take Quentin Johnston now.
Yeah, I mean, he's always been my wide receiver 3. He's going to still be my wide receiver overall 3, because the next guy we're going to be talking about within a bit, not Zay Flowers, but Jordan Addison, is going to still be my wide receiver 2. because
Okay, we'll get there in 1 second. Let's go over to Zay Flowers. Before we go to Zay Flowers, this is the most cringy thing ever. But we have almost 1,300 people watching this. I actually had to hit the gritty earlier today on a live stream because we had 1,000 likes on it. I will do it again if we had 1,000 likes. I have no idea what we are at right now, but Bush will hit the gritty for y'all. I had 1,000 likes. Okay?
I'll hit the gritty. Okay, I actually had a pretty
hit the gritty for 1,000 likes.
Lie.
Go down there, drop a like. And this is what I need to ask y'all because I had to bounce from your live stream for a little bit to make dinner earlier. And I came back on and y'all were talking about Zay Flowers in Baltimore. You liking the fit? How do y'all like the Baltimore fit for Zay Flowers? I understand new offensive coordinator. They're supposed to throw the ball, blah, blah, blah. How is this good?
I mean, for fantasy, I can acknowledge the fact that we're not expecting this to be a Justin Herbert-led 650 pass attempt type of team. But if we're talking about the fit in terms of schematics for the offense, obviously you got Bateman as that outside wide receiver, Odell to contribute him. You could have Zay Flowers as that slot wide receiver day one. If you're taking a slot wide receiver in the first round, after taking one in Bateman a couple years ago, after signing Odell Beckham, I'm expecting Todd Monken to run his scheme here. And if we saw Todd Monken over there in Tampa Bay, this was a team that liked to throw the ball. Now, when you counterbalance that with Lamar Jackson being at hand, obviously you're not expecting, a 650 attempt type of season from Lamar Jackson, but if you're talking about Lamar Jackson being a 550, 570 attempt type of quarterback, I mean, we could be talking about, we mentioned on our live stream, but we could be talking about Lamar Jackson as the #1 overall quarterback in fantasy. In terms of Zay Flowers, sorry, I almost called him Zay Jones, but in terms of Zay Flowers, like you kind of said, year one, maybe you don't expect that ceiling, but year two on, obviously they took that first round overall wide receiver. Maybe they don't have commitment to Rashad Bateman long-term. Obviously, Odell Beckham, 1 year type of contract. I think this is going to be the wide receiver 1 for Baltimore long-term.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty simple. I don't usually overreact to landing spots in general with wide receivers. Because if you're a talented wide receiver and you have the ability to command targets, which as, good as Odell Beckham was in his prime, as, excited as we've been about Rashad Bateman in the past, if Zay Flowers is the best receiver on that team, he's going to earn the most targets. And he does play with a above average quarterback. Maybe he's not the most elite passer in the world. I just like the landing spot because I think he can fit the offense well. Lamar has never had a true possession wide receiver outside of his tight end, Mark Andrews. So part of why I like the fit is because I know everybody else will hate it and I'll get a value on him in rookie drafts. It's not necessarily that I'm like, oh yes, stock up Zay Flowers. I know everybody's going to be Ravens, boo, shit, landing spot. Everybody's going to hate it. And I might get him at 201 in my rookie drafts now.
Okay, well, let's go fast and we can, at the end of this, come up with a rough outline of how rookie drafts are going to go. Just super rough outline. I know it's already incredibly late where y'all are. I don't want to hold you up too much. Addison, you can run around, celebrate. I know he's your guy. I know it's a phenomenal landing spot. What are y'all thinking?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably one of the best landing spots for Jordan Addison. You could be talking about Buffalo. I wouldn't bat an eye there. You could be talking about like the Chargers, like we got with Quentin Johnson. I wouldn't bat an eye there. But realistically, if you were going to develop a route running wide receiver, you got Kirk Cousins. You got a passing offense already there. You need a tertiary weapon outside of Justin Jefferson. Jordan Addison is the guy that, if you were to count out Justin Jefferson in this offense, can command 100+ targets. And I'm sorry for those of you that really had optimism for a guy like KJ Osborne, but Jordan Addison almost kills him.
Yeah, I don't think anybody was too excited about KJ Osborne. I think you have the super condensed target tree with Jefferson dominating like a 27% of the team's targets. And then you have Hawkinson and Addison almost splitting the rest. I think it's a phenomenal landing spot. Bush, I know you're a massive Jordan Addison guy. We will have you on and make an entire Addison video. I don't want to waste too much more of your time. Dalton Kincaid, phenomenal landing spot. Anything we need to say?
No, I think he's a good landing spot for him. Last thing I'll say on Addison. They don't have a slot receiver. He played in the slot at Pitt, and most scouts project him better as a slot receiver for Addison. So I actually do think it's a great landing spot as well. Not going to go too crazy, but 107 type of area. Kincaid, also a great landing spot for him. Who doesn't want to play with Josh Allen?
Awesome. Let's move it down. And that's really about it that we have to talk about. So what we need to do is rough outline. We had some crazy people in the chat earlier that were saying Anthony Richardson 101 ? Like, I understand it's a good landing spot, But at the end of the day, I think this is a little too aggressive. General idea of how we're taking this. Personally, me, top 3, I think I'm going Bijan 1, Young 2, 3, 4, personal preference for you, Stroud, Richardson. I think whatever you want between 3 and 4 between those guys, I'm fine with. I think those are the locked and loaded top 4 names, though.
I'll quickly say, if somebody were to say, I'm taking Anthony Richardson at 102 over Bryce Young, I wouldn't bat an eye there because of the landing spot, because of obviously what Shane Steichen was able to develop with Jalen Hurts over there in Philadelphia. That was quite literally the nuts landing spot for Anthony Richardson. So if you were to argue that, given the upside, oh, this guy could potentially be a top 6 overall startup quarterback this time next year, I wouldn't bat an eye. But like you kind of said, he's most likely going to be my 103 behind Bryce Young, obviously first overall to Carolina, behind Bijan Robinson, obviously 8th overall to the Atlanta Falcons.
But are you even considering Richardson? I know you're a big young guy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Big young guy. Not batting any eyes, too, as Danny has said at least 37 times this stream. Yeah, I'm going Young 2, Richardson, if you love him. But for me, I'd be Stroud still slightly, unless you had, you needed upside on your roster. You have 2 great quarterbacks already. And then we can probably move on to the next area of the draft, which is it's probably JSN, Gibbs in that order for most people.
Yeah.
And then I would probably have Addison slightly ahead of QJ. But then that would kind of make up that like mini tier there.
But if we're breaking up the tiers, right? So if we were just trying to tell people like immediately, this is where we want to be picking. We want a rookie pick inside this range. I would say tier 1 is going to be, and of course, Bijan's kind of in his own tier, but just for shits and giggles here, Bijan, Anthony Richardson, Young, Stroud, whatever order. Top tier of 4 guys. Then there's a tier break, and we have 2 guys with Gibbs, JSN. And then I think the real conversation we can have afterwards is what we are going to be doing with the next tier player. So starting at 7, right? We are through the first 6. This is what we're looking at. Quentin Johnston, Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison. I personally think at this point, now that Will Levis falls out of round 1, and I thought if Will Levis was the top 5 NFL draft pick, I was slamming him in every Dynasty rookie draft. Now I'm going to have to move him 100 picks easily down our rankings. Like I'm going to have to move him down a crazy amount now that he falls outside of round 1. But do we slide Zay Flowers into this range? I don't think I will have Zay Flowers in. I think I'll have another tier 2 guys with Quentin Johnston, Jordan Addison there, unless Zach Charbonnet gets a phenomenal landing spot tomorrow.
I'll take Charbonnet easily over Flowers as long as he goes, day 2 of the NFL draft. But I think Flowers will probably slide into like the late first area, 110 to 112 type of area.
Okay. I know y'all are obviously going Addison, but for the sake of just moving on from here, can we agree that pick 7, 8 is some order of Johnston, Addison?
Yeah, agreed.
Okay.
I mean, 7, 8
is some order of Johnston, Addison. Then we see that teardrop. We're at 9. 9, 10 is that Flowers, Charbonnet. And then we have another massive teardrop because Levis can't slide in now.
I mean, it depends where Charbonnet goes, but assuming he goes day 2, assuming he goes even round 2 of the NFL draft, he's going to figure in there. Obviously, any of these guys are going to be leapfrogging, Will Levis in the draft. We made the Will Levis bet, assuming this guy was going to be a top 10 NFL draft pick. The fact that this guy didn't even go day 1 of the NFL draft is red flags in my opinion. And I don't think you can touch him until even mid-round 2 maybe is the earliest, assuming he gets good, great day 2 level draft capital. We're talking top 40 level draft capital, assuming he goes like, I don't even know what's a landing spot in the top 40 he can even realistically
He's Malik Willis now. That's who he is.
Agreed.
He went from, in my mind, if he was a top 5 pick, worst case scenario, like if you go pick 2 to the Houston Texans, worst case scenario, you're either Bortles or Trubisky and you start 4 years, But once you fall outside of round 1, then that job security is just out the window. Now you are Malik Willis and you're a 2nd round rookie pick. But so would we say that after pick 10, then once we get to pick 11, where we're kind of going to be looking at the crapshoot of running backs that are all about the same, like the Tank Bigsby's, the Roshan Johnson, the Tajay Spears, blah, blah, blah. And then the Jalen Hyatt, Josh Downs in there. After pick 10, it's the wild, wild west.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
Hopefully we get a good, 39th overall capital for Josh Downs, or, a good
if Josh
top
Downs
of the
goes
second round, Michael Mayer or something like that. Like, there's still some guys that could figure in there, but as of now, we don't know those landing spots, obviously. So, yeah, I would say that's probably about the way it would work. I'd say the tier break is probably after about 108, where QJ/Addison is going to be.
Okay, but I know you're a big Mayer guy, so is there a landing spot in the second round that will keep Michael Mayer ahead of Dalton Kincaid in Buffalo for you?
It's hard to argue with first round draft capital going to the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah.
I think Mayer's the better talent, but talent versus profile sometimes you got to weigh all those factors. So I can't answer that question until I definitively know where Michael Mayer went.
So are we thinking that we can possibly move Kincaid up to that pick 11, 12, 13, 14 range at this point? Like, can he push late round one?
I think at minimum, he's an early second type of pick. But like you kind of said, in certain league formats, especially in tight end premium, if you want to take this guy at the back end of your first round, obviously you get the Buffalo landing spot. Obviously, you get the first round draft capital. You get Josh Allen insulation. And realistically, like we've kind of mentioned off stream past, but Stephon Diggs is going to be the wide receiver one there. After that, I mean, people are going to hype up Gabe Davis as the outside wide receiver. But if you were to tell me that Dalton Kincaid was their second leading wide receiver for our receiver total from a volume type of standpoint, he has that profile to be able to inherit that type of volume on this type of team. You get Josh Allen, like I already said. You have that insulation from a landing spot perspective. And a guy, like I said, in college who has shown the ability to earn targets at an extremely high level. So I think Buffalo was the nuts landing spot, barring maybe like Dallas or the Chargers, for a guy like Dalton Kincaid.
Yeah, definitely. And one last thing, I just want to address this because I feel like we didn't talk too much about like the actual landing spot for Gibbs in Detroit at 12. Obviously, there are a lot of running backs in the backfield, but if they invest into him at pick 12, he goes to an elite offensive line. He has this draft capital, that receiving down skill set. Don't have like our DeAndre Swift fandom as the overall fantasy football community where we think DeAndre Swift is great. And then obviously Jamal Williams is translating his touchdowns to maybe David Montgomery. Don't think that this is a bad landing spot for Jahmyr Gibbs. This was a good thing for Gibbs in my mind, to get this kind of capital and to be playing behind that great offensive line, because like we said already, I think this just means DeAndre Swift is done. And I think, Jahmyr Gibbs is easily the 103 in a one quarterback format.
Yeah, Gibbs is going to be used like Swift. He's not going to get goal line work, but he's going to get a lot of receiving work. It's exactly what we wanted out of Gibbs. We weren't going to get a 30 touch workload. That was never going to happen. This is a good situation. I will say Lions will draft Michael Mayer at 35. I'm just going to call that right now. Still would probably take Kincaid given the situation. Maybe not, but I would be happy to get Mayer sliding to me in a lot of rookie drafts.
Great. Awesome. I think we can call it there. We talked about a lot. Obviously, we are going to have a ton to talk about tomorrow. I'm going to stay up as late as I can, updating my rankings on flockfantasy.com. I know y'all are currently pushing 1 a.m. your time zone, so I'm sure y'all are going to get some nice sleep. But yeah, of course, thank you for coming on, guys. Really appreciate you, and just a phenomenal day overall. I don't think it could have gone any better.
Appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, thank you so much for staying out with us this late. As always, make sure y'all are dropping a like in the live stream. Really appreciate all of y'all so damn much, especially everybody who went and hung out with us in the other live stream earlier today. Phenomenal day, top to bottom. I couldn't have done it without y'all. Thank you so much for everything. And yeah, have a great night, guys. And my rookie rankings will be updated on flockfantasy.com probably in about an hour. I just want to sit here. I'm going to update them in an hour, and they're going to completely change 24 hours from now. Okay, this is going to be an initial rough idea. Here's my initial reaction, and we'll be able to fine tune it a little bit later on. But thank you, guys.